In the case of a committee, there isn't just one decision maker. It truly is a collaborative effort to make a decision. And so you need to spend time preparing for your big presentation or pitch to that committee, and make sure you understand the different nuances and political climate that are going on within that group, and make sure you've addressed all of their needs. You may, for example, be dealing with multiple people from a finance or from an IT background or from the marketing group. And so you may have to weigh and balance off several of those requirements and those needs to make sure you're addressing all of those concerns. You need to make sure that that first time that you meet with that committee, that you've got everybody important in that room. The decision makers need to be present, because you're never going to be as compelling as the first time you tell your story. The second time will always be more stale. It'll never be as dramatic as the first time they hear something. One of the things that's often forgotten in many of these presentations, especially with committees, is that it's not strictly about presenting your product or your company. You really need to take the time to do the research to make sure you understand the customer's needs and that you're selling what they want. I mean, ultimately, that's what you're trying to get across, is that you have what they want and you understand what that is, and that you've made your presentation customer-centric as opposed to your company-centric. Your customer needs to see that you've put everything into that presentation. It's amazing when you see how many presentations start out with their first 10 or 20 PowerPoint slides with everything about their corporation without ever addressing or bringing to the attention the first key things that you're going to bring out that are going to address their need, because that's what they're going to be interested in most. You can build that case by first contacting all the stakeholders and making sure you do understand all that. And it only takes one unhappy participant to really derail a presentation. So you really need to make sure you've got everyone in the room kind of keyed in on those key points that you address, and making sure that you've also gone out and analyzed the competitive landscape and make sure that you understand other vendors they've spoken to, other people they're talking to in the future, and that you have essentially laid down your differentiating points and put down your time bombs for the vendors, basically, and make sure you've kind of put down your knowledge of the products in the space, so that everyone has to play on your playing field. You've set the ground rules, and that will give you the ultimate advantage, particularly in a committee situation when many different people may have different things. The last thing I'll mention is there always is someone who is the leader. So you do need to find out who that is. And it isn't necessarily always the highest ranking person. It might be a very trusted employee, someone who's been doing a lot of the research, and also someone who just might be the one that is more vocal and is engaged in the discussion and really sort of takes this particular decision under their wing, and they're championing a particular either vendor or a particular set of requirements that are ultimately the most important, because they're sort of putting those forward as the key ones. And they're defining, for example, RFP requirements, or they've defined sort of key percentage criteria that are going to be made to make the decision. That's obviously one of the things you want to find out about when you're going into these kind of meetings, is who's going to be that key person that's going to be driving that agenda. That really comes down to it. I mean, when you're dealing with a committee, you really got to sell to the customer need. You've got to make sure you've identified the stakeholders, and that you've identified those stakeholders' requirements, and that you're speaking to them. And ultimately, if you're selling to a committee, it's nice to have your own group of people also there to help you, so you can mingle with that crowd effectively outside of the main presentation. And also within the meeting, you have a balance between you're not doing all the talking, other people are pitching in with their specifics, and showing your firm and your company to have expertise beyond just your own. Ultimately, you're showing the breadth of your experience by doing that, and that's also what committees are looking for. They're looking for people who are on par with them when they bring a lot of people to the room, that they can also interact with many different people and feel comfortable and trust the ultimate persons that they're dealing with.